The Wyoming night wasn't supposed to sound like this. Davisha Grant's scream tore through the darkness as two masked operatives dragged her across. The dirt, boots scraping, fingers clawing the ground as she fought to stay awake. Flashlights sliced through the tall grass. A truck engine hummed low in the distance, too steady, too prepared. Let her go. Holden roared from somewhere behind her, his voice cracking through the cold wind. She couldn't see him clearly, her vision blurred, but she knew that tone. The quiet man she met on Crestwell Ranch, the man who moved like a protector, even before she understood why, now sounded like a storm breaking open. Another gunshot exploded, echoing across the valley. Davisha flinched as dust lifted inches from her face. Holden sprinted toward her faster than she had ever seen, his gray-blue eyes burning with fear and fury. His chest heaved, breaths ragged. A man who had run out of time long before tonight. One operative leaned down, whispering into Davisha's ear as she struggled beneath his grip. "You married the man who can bring down a government." Her blood turned to ice. She tried to shake her head. No, this wasn't real. This wasn't the life she came to Wyoming to build. She left heartbreak in Cleveland to find peace, not to be dragged across open fields under military-grade flashlights. Holden fired again, one clean shot, forcing the operatives to duck low and drag her faster. "Davisha," he yelled, voice trembling. "Hold on, I'm right here." She reached her hand toward him, fingers shaking, but an operative stomped her wrist into the dirt. She cried out as pain shot up her arm. Holden's roar echoed across the field, raw and broken. "Touch her again, and You'll come with us quietly," the lead operative interrupted, "or she dies here." The moon hid behind a cloud. The wind stilled. Even the horses in the back pasture fell silent. Holden's footfalls slowed. His shadow stretched across the ground, long and desperate. Davisha could hear her own heartbeat thundering. "This can't be happening. He promised he'd keep me safe. Why is this happening?" A flashlight beam hit her face. She squeezed her eyes shut as one operative yanked her upright by the arms. Holden stopped just 10 feet away, hands raised, gun trembling. "Let her go," he said, breath shallow. "She has nothing to do with this." The lead operative smirked beneath his mask. "You should have stayed dead, Crestwell." The world tilted as Davisha was shoved forward again, her boots dragging in the dirt. She wasn't supposed to be part of this world. She wasn't supposed to be hunted. But tonight had made one thing clear. Holden Crestwell was not the simple ranch owner she believed he was. He was a man running from shadows powerful enough to tear both their lives apart. As another round of gunfire cracked across the field, Davisha's scream shattered into the wind, and the story truly began. The screen fades to black for a heartbeat. Fatal embracers. Let me ask you something. Have you ever trusted someone so deeply that you didn't question the shadows behind their smile? Davisha did. She trusted Holden, the quiet man with gentle eyes, the man who cooked her warm meals after long days on the ranch, the man who spoke softly but carried storms in his silence. She trusted him because he made the wide emptiness of Wyoming feel like a home she never knew she needed. But have you ever loved someone without knowing who they truly were? Have you ever held someone's hand, believing you understood them? All while they carried a past heavy enough to bury you too? Because that's what happened to Davisha Grant. She didn't know she was falling for a man who once stood at the center of a financial empire. She didn't know he'd exposed secrets powerful enough to shake Washington. She didn't know he'd survived something no man should, only to choose hiding over revenge. She didn't know. Until it was too late. The night she said "I do," she thought she was marrying peace, healing, a second chance at life. She didn't realize she was marrying a man hunted by a political dynasty, a corrupt senator, and a private intelligence group that erased people without leaving a trace. She didn't know the weight of the surname Crestwell. She didn't know that loving him meant inheriting his enemies. As the narrator continues, the music deepens, slow, suspenseful, pulling viewers deeper. Be honest with yourself. If someone you loved was carrying a secret that could destroy you, would you stay? Would you run? Would you fight beside them? Would you risk everything just to protect the heart that finally made you feel chosen? Davisha didn't run, but maybe she should have, because falling for Holden Crestwell didn't just change her life. It put a target on her back. If you're still here watching, family, hit that like button so YouTube keeps pushing this story out. You're not ready for what's coming next. The cold Wyoming dirt pressed into Davisha's palms as an operative shoved her to her knees. Her breath trembled out in clouds, the night air burning against her skin. Somewhere behind her, Holden's boots shifted, a man ready to break in half if she was harmed again. The lead operative circled them both like a wolf who already tasted victory. "Cresswell didn't tell you who he is, did he?" His voice was cold, detached, professional in a terrifying way. Davisha tried to lift her head, but fear tightened everything inside her. The operative leaned close enough for her to hear the truth clearly. "You didn't just marry a man, sweetheart. You married a threat." Holden stepped forward, voice low and controlled. "Leave her out of this." But the operative ignored him and continued, enjoying the unraveling. "Your husband crossed a political dynasty. He exposed a senator who launders money through national contractors. He uncovered a family that's controlled this country's wealth for decades. He knelt, bringing his masked face level with hers. And now? They want him silenced. Permanently." Davisha's heart dropped, not because of the danger she was in, but because Holden had carried this alone. All this time, behind quiet smiles, behind gentle dinners, behind every soft moment he shared with her on the porch swing. He never told her. "Let her go," Holden repeated, voice trembling despite the strength he forced into it. The operative turned his head slowly. "If she walks away now, she'll run straight to the press. We can't allow that." Davisha's breath hitched. Holden's face hardened, jaw tight, eyes burning with something beyond fear. Something like regret. Or love. Or both. The problem was painfully clear now. If they didn't survive this night, the truth dies with them. The crimes, the corruption, the dynasty's betrayal, all of it would disappear into the dark. The same dark that now surrounded Davisha like a closing fist. Holden's voice cracked. "Take me. Let her go. I'll go willingly." But the operative smiled beneath the mask. "We'll see." The suspense thickened, every heartbeat sinking with Davisha's rising panic. Because this wasn't just about danger anymore. It was about the truth. A truth someone was willing to kill for. "Stop!" Davisha cried as an operative grabbed her by the hair, forcing her head up. Tears blurred her vision, but she saw Holden. Saw him freeze, saw his whole world collapse in his eyes. Holden dropped his gun. It hit the dirt with a dull thud that echoed louder than the gunshots. "Take me," he said, voice raw. "No deals, no questions. Just take me. But let her go." The leader nodded once, too easily. Two operatives released Davisha and seized Holden, yanking his arms behind him. He didn't fight, didn't flinch, didn't resist. He only kept his gaze locked on her. Davisha, his wife, the woman he married to protect. The woman he never wanted, dragged into the past he tried so hard to bury. She tried to crawl toward him, voice cracking. "Holden, don't do this." One operative shoved her back into the dirt. She gasped, not from pain but from the terror of losing him. Holden stepped forward toward the operatives, face calm but eyes broken. "You promised me you'd stay away from her," he said quietly. "She's innocent." The leader shrugged. Collateral damage was never off the table. Davisha's scream ripped through the night. "No!" Holden lunged in her direction, but they slammed him to his knees. He groaned as his shoulder hit the ground. "Please." Davisha sobbed. "Please don't take him." Holden lifted his head, forcing strength into his voice. "Davisha, listen to me." His breathing hitched. "Stay alive. Stay hidden. No matter what happens to me." "No," she cried. "You don't get to say goodbye like this." But it was too late. The operatives dragged him backward toward the black SUV, waiting at the edge of the field. Davisha scrambled forward again, reaching out, but an operative slammed the butt of a rifle into the ground inches from her hand. Holden shouted, "Don't touch her." They forced him into the back seat. Davisha's world shattered as the door slammed shut. The last thing she saw was Holden pressing his palm against the window, a silent promise, as the SUV sped away into the darkness. And her scream followed it. "Holden. Family." If this opening already has your heart racing, hit like and comment right now so YouTube pushes this story out. The story begins. The small bus rattled as it pulled away, leaving Davisha Grant standing alone beside the long, dusty road cutting through Wyoming's wide-open land. The sky stretched endlessly, blue, bold, unbothered, as if daring her to breathe deeper than she had in years. She tightened her jacket, lifting her chin to take in the stillness. Back home in Cleveland, you didn't get silence like this. There was always a siren somewhere, a car horn, an overheard argument, a neighbor singing loudly on the porch, or kids laughing as they ran across cracked sidewalks. Here, the world felt paused, like it was waiting on her. Her suitcase wheels thumped against gravel as she walked toward Crestwell. Ranch, following the directions Marvina had texted her the night before. Girl, she'd said, you need rest. Real rest. Get away from drama, from the man who didn't deserve you, from the job that treated you like a number. Reset your spirit in fresh air. Davisha had laughed then, but now she understood what her friend meant. This land was quiet in a way that made you listen to your own heartbeat. Peaceful, yet oddly intimidating. Like healing and fear lived in the same breath. She passed fenced fields, stretching far as the hills. Horses grazed lazily, their movements slow and sure. The wind brushed through her curls, carrying the scent of pine and something else, something older, grounded, safe. This place feels like a whole different world, she whispered. By the time the ranch house came into view, her legs ached and her fingers tingled from the cold. The home was sturdy, made of dark timber and stone, with a wide porch that overlooked the entire property. It didn't look abandoned, but it didn't feel busy either. It felt like someone lived there quietly, intentionally. She stepped closer and paused as the front door opened. A man stood there, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a simple long-sleeve shirt and worn jeans. His hair, mostly silver, caught the sunlight in soft strands. But it was his eyes, gray-blue, calm yet searching, that made her breath hitch. Holden Crestwell, the ranch owner, her new employer, a man whose presence felt like the land, steady, quiet, and holding secrets she couldn't yet name. He didn't speak immediately. He simply took her in with a gaze so gentle she felt her shoulders loosen without permission. You must be Davisha, he finally said, voice deep but soft, like he tried not to startle the silence around them. She nodded. Yes, thank you for accepting my application. This place looks peaceful. A tiny twitch of a smile touched his lips. Peace is something we take seriously out here. For a moment the wind paused between them, and Davisha, who came all this way to start over, felt the first hint that she had stepped into a chapter she never anticipated. Holden stepped onto the porch, boots landing with the soft thud of a man who knew how to move without disturbing anything he didn't have to. He descended the steps and gently reached for her suitcase, his movements deliberate and respectful. You must be tired, he said. It's a long trip out here. His voice carried warmth, but not the loud, showy kind. His tone was controlled, careful, practiced, like he'd spent years learning how not to reveal too much at once. Davisha studied him discreetly. He seemed like the type who didn't speak unless his words mattered. His shoulders stayed slightly squared, like he was ready to shield someone without hesitation. Yet something softened in his eyes whenever she met them, something unexpectedly tender. Thank you, she replied. I wasn't sure what to expect coming here. Most people aren't, he murmured. He led her into the house. The interior was rustic but clean, organized with the precision of a man who needed order to survive. Not sterile, but quiet. Almost lonely. This will be your room, he said, opening a door to a cozy space with a quilted blanket and sunlight spilling across the floor. She stepped in, running her fingers along the wooden dresser. It's beautiful. Holden stood in the doorway for a beat longer than necessary, as if debating something. Then he said softly, If you need anything at all, just ask. She turned to him. Thank you, Holden. The sound of his name in her voice made him inhale sharply. He masked it quickly, reverting to that calm, stoic stillness she was already beginning to recognize. He didn't flirt. He didn't posture. He simply existed with a quiet strength that made the room feel safer. Rest, he said. I'll show you the ranch when you're ready. And as he walked away, Davisha couldn't help noticing. Men didn't usually make silence feel comforting. Holden Crestwell did. By late afternoon, Davisha joined him outside near the stables. The air tasted crisp, hinting at approaching evening. Holden guided her through the basics of ranch life, feeding schedules, water troughs, the temperaments of certain horses. But he spoke lightly, giving her space to absorb everything at her pace. She laughed when one curious mare tried nibbling at her sleeve. Hey now, I'm not on the menu. Holden chuckled quietly under his breath, a sound that seemed rare enough to warm the air around them. He watched her with something close to admiration, how she smiled easily, how she spoke gently to the animals, how she didn't complain even when her boots sank into the mud. Most people are overwhelmed the first day, he said. She shrugged. I needed a change. And this is different, but in a good way. He nodded once, but she caught the faint softening in his expression. She had a presence that settled into spaces naturally, filling them without noise, brightening them without demanding anything. As she brushed one of the horses, Holden leaned against the fence, arms crossed loosely. He wasn't the type to stare openly, yet his attention never drifted far from her. When a strand of hair fell into her face, he tensed slightly, as if tempted to tuck it back but refusing to cross a boundary. His restraint carried a deep, unspoken intensity. "Is something wrong?" she asked, noticing the way his jaw twitched. Holden blinked and straightened subtly. "No, just making sure you're adjusting." Davisha smiled. "I am." What she didn't see, as she turned back to the horse, was the way Holden's gaze softened, almost reverently, before he forced himself to look away. She had been here only hours, and yet her warmth had begun to thaw corners of him he'd left cold for years. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in streaks of pink and gold. Davisha wiped her hands on her jeans and admired the horizon. She never imagined she'd appreciate stillness this much. But Holden suddenly shifted. He stood straighter. His breathing slowed. His entire body went still, not with calm but with alertness. Davisha followed his line of sight. A dark-colored truck rolled down the distant road, moving slow. Too slow. Its tinted windows reflected the fading light, offering no hint of who sat behind them. "Is that normal?" Davisha asked. Holden didn't answer at first. His eyes narrowed just slightly. His jaw tightened. "People don't usually drive this far out unless they have a reason," he finally said, voice lower now, thicker with something she didn't recognize. "Fear? Anger? Memories?" She stepped closer, instinctively seeking his presence. He didn't step back. The truck crawled past the entrance to the ranch and continued down the road until it vanished behind distant hills. But Holden didn't relax, not even after the engine faded. "That truck been here before?" she asked softly. "A couple times," he said. Her heartbeat quickened. "Do you know who it is?" Holden swallowed, forcing his voice into calm. "No," but the look in his eyes told her otherwise. Davisha didn't know his past yet, not the full weight of it, not the danger tied to his name. But in that moment, she knew the quiet life he lived wasn't just a choice. It was a shield. And someone was testing it. Davisha stood beside Holden, the evening wind brushing against them, as silence settled again. But this silence wasn't peaceful like before. It was heavier now, charged, as if the land itself sensed something shifting around them. Holden exhaled slowly. "Don't worry," he said, though his voice lacked its usual steadiness. "You're safe here." She studied him carefully. His eyes avoided hers, focusing instead on the direction the truck had disappeared. The protective stillness she found comforting earlier now felt like a warning, like he was bracing for something she didn't yet understand. "Holden," she whispered, "are you sure everything's okay?" He finally looked at her, and something flickered across his expression, something tender, conflicted, and deeply human. "I'll make sure of it," he said quietly. She didn't know why, but she believed him, even before she knew the danger chasing him, even before she knew the secrets he carried, even before she knew the man he used to be. In the fading light, as the ranch settled into night, Davisha felt the first tremor of a story she hadn't planned on living. A story that would pull her into the heart of something far bigger than herself. And that's when Holden stepped back, inhaled deeply, and said softly, "Let's head inside. Long day tomorrow." But he didn't move until she did, watching, guarding, making sure nothing approached from the shadows. If this first chapter already has you feeling something, go ahead and tap like so YouTube pushes this story out. Trust me, everything is just beginning. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the curtains in soft gold ribbons, warming Davisha's face as she stirred awake. She stretched slowly, feeling the subtle ache of travel finally settling into her bones. Wyoming's quiet had followed her into her dreams, gentle, almost humming in the background like a distant memory of peace. After washing up and pulling her hair into a loose puff, she stepped into the hallway. The ranch house smelled faintly of cedar and something homemade, maybe the remnants of last night's dinner. She walked slowly, studying the details she hadn't noticed when she arrived. The home was beautiful, but empty in a way that wasn't physical. Dark wooden beams stretched across the ceilings. Polished floors reflected the soft morning light, and the walls, light brown with warm undertones, held framed pieces of nature, rivers, mountains, horses in mid-run. Every corner looked intentionally placed, but untouched, like someone created a home once but stopped living in it long ago. Davisha ran her fingers along the banister as she descended the stairs. Everything was clean, neat, almost meticulously arranged. Yet the stillness held a heaviness she couldn't explain, a quiet ache embedded in the walls. She stepped into the living room and paused. There was a single blanket folded neatly on the far couch, a book resting spine down beside it. She stepped closer. The pages were slightly bent, showing it had been read several times. The title was something philosophical, deep, introspective, the kind of book someone read when trying to understand life after it had broken them. Davisha inhaled softly. Holden's presence lingered faintly here, not loud, not boastful, but quietly wounded. She turned toward the hallway leading to his office, noticing the door slightly ajar. Inside she could see the edge of a desk, a lamp still faintly glowing, and a mug half full of coffee. She sensed something deeper, like the house itself remembered the man he used to be, and the pain that made him leave that life behind. She stopped at the doorway, lowering her voice instinctively. "Holden?" There was no answer. It wasn't fear that made her step back. It was respect. This house felt like it belonged to a man who had learned to live with quiet because noise had once been dangerous, and she wasn't here to force anything. Instead, she continued exploring, taking in the layout, the atmosphere, the echo of solitude hovering in the air. It wasn't sadness she felt, exactly. It was more like survivor energy. Holden Crestwell was a man who had learned to hold his broken pieces in silence. And as she moved through the house, she sensed one thing clearly. He wasn't just hiding from the world. He was hiding from the ghosts he carried. The day passed quietly, filled with simple chores and instructions Holden walked her through. He maintained that steady demeanor, calm, careful, almost too controlled. But every time their eyes met, something warm flickered beneath the surface. By evening, Davisha followed the smell of seasoned chicken drifting from the kitchen. Holden stood at the stove, stirring something in a cast-iron pan. The sleeves of his shirt were rolled up, revealing strong forearms dusted with faint scars that hinted at a past he still refused to speak about. "You cook too?" she asked lightly. Holden looked over his shoulder. "I manage." His understated humility made her smile. She grabbed plates while he finished the meal. When they sat at the small wooden table, the silence wasn't awkward. It was charged, warm, alive, the kind of silence where two people notice each other more clearly. "This is really good," she said after a bite. "Glad you like it." His eyes held hers a beat too long before dropping to his plate. There it was again, that subtle, undeniable tension threading between them like a quiet invitation neither dared to acknowledge. At one point, her fork slipped from her fingers. She bent to pick it up at the same moment he reached forward to hand her a napkin. Their hands brushed, just the lightest touch, but it froze both of them. Holden's breath caught, quiet but unmistakable. Davisha's heart thudded in response, her skin warming where his fingertips grazed hers. He didn't pull away immediately. His hand hovered, inches from hers, as though something in him wanted to linger in that closeness. Then, slowly, reluctantly, he withdrew. "Sorry," he murmured, clearing his throat. "It's fine," she whispered, feeling far from fine. He stood abruptly, gathering the empty pan to distract himself. His movements were precise, almost too intentional, as if he needed control to keep something else from spilling out. The light hanging above them swayed faintly, the shadows shifting across. His face, revealing a hint of vulnerability he usually kept hidden. Davisha studied him carefully. This man was lonely, deeply lonely, and the quiet between them wasn't emptiness. It was longing neither of them knew how to voice. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "Thank you for sharing a meal with me. It's been a while." Her chest tightened. "Me too," she replied softly. For the rest of the evening, they moved around each other like two souls circling gravity, drawn closer without touching again. Just as Davisha placed her dishes in the sink, headlights swept across the living room wall. She turned, frowning slightly. "Expecting someone?" she asked. Holden stiffened so subtly she almost missed it. "No." He walked to the front door with the steady caution of a man who measured every risk. When he opened it, a sturdy middle-aged man stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. His presence was sharp, observant, carrying the energy of someone who had lived through too much. "Toller," Holden said under his breath. "Evening," Toller replied, eyes scanning the room before settling briefly on Davisha. Holden closed the door behind him. "Is something wrong?" Toller's jaw tightened. "They're circling again." The words were soft, but the impact was crushing. Davisha froze near the sink, trying to pretend she wasn't listening, but the tension in Holden's posture was impossible to ignore. His shoulders squared, breath shallow, eyes narrowing with a storm he instantly tried to mask. "How close?" Holden asked. "Close enough." Toller folded his arms. The same truck was spotted near the old transmission station. 3 times. Holden exhaled sharply, barely audible. Their testing distance. Exactly. Davisha's heart fluttered, not out of curiosity but instinct. The same instinct that had whispered to her earlier that Holden's silence wasn't simple. Toller lowered his voice. You need to prepare, Holden. If they're scouting routes again, you know what that means. Holden clenched his jaw, emotion flickering through his eyes, fear, frustration, resignation. I know. The moment held weight, thick as storm clouds brewing overhead. Toller gave Davisha a brief, polite nod, then spoke softly to Holden again. You don't have much time. Holden didn't look at her. Didn't dare. Because whatever this warning meant, it wasn't something she was supposed to hear. But she had. And nothing about the way Toller said they're circling again felt normal. Davisha pretended to wipe the counter, while straining to hear the rest of their conversation. The 2 men moved into Holden's office, but their voices, tense and low, still drifted down the hall. Can't avoid them forever, Toller said. I'm not avoiding, Holden replied, voice steady but tight. I'm protecting what's left of my life. You can't outrun a dynasty, Toller whispered. They have resources you can't imagine. A chill slid down Davisha's spine. Dynasty? What dynasty? She stepped closer to the hallway, stopping just before she crossed into obvious eavesdropping. Toller continued. I'm telling you, once they connect the dots, they'll come here. Holden's reply carried a crack of raw emotion. I won't let them bring danger to this place. Not after everything. And the woman? Toller asked. Does she know what she stepped into? Silence. A long, painful silence. Davisha's breath hitched. The woman? They meant her. Holden finally spoke. No. And she can't know. Davisha's heart thudded sharply. She wasn't naive. She didn't expect everyone in Wyoming to bare their souls immediately. But this felt different. Heavy. Dangerous. Like Holden was holding up the sky alone, and she had just wandered underneath without knowing. Footsteps approached. She scrambled back to the kitchen and pretended to search for a towel. Holden stepped out of his office, his expression carefully controlled. You okay? She asked, studying him. Holden nodded, but the weight behind his eyes contradicted him. Yes. You look tense, she said softly. His throat bobbed. Just ranch things. She didn't believe him. Not for a second. But she said nothing. Because trust came in layers. And Holden was hiding a layer thick enough to fear. The night settled deep and dark. Holden walked Toller out, voices low and grave as they exchanged a few final words. Davisha stood by the window, watching the 2 men shake hands before Toller. His truck rolled down the driveway and disappeared into the night. She turned to head upstairs when she saw it. Headlights. Again, a dark truck creeping along the same stretch of road as yesterday, but this time moving even slower, watching. The engine hummed softly, insidiously, as if the driver wanted to be noticed but not identified. The truck paused near the entrance, idling long enough for Davisha to feel the hairs rise on the back of her neck. Holden, she whispered urgently. He appeared beside her in seconds, eyes instantly locked onto the road. His jaw tightened, and his entire posture changed, not with fear but with readiness. A quiet, controlled readiness. Get back, he said gently but firmly, stepping slightly in front of her. The truck lingered another moment. Then it rolled forward. Slowly, deliberately, until it vanished into the dark stretch of highway leading toward the hills. Holden's hands clenched at his sides. Davisha swallowed. That's the same truck? Yes. And it was here last night, too. Yes. She hesitated before asking softly, should I be worried? Holden finally turned to face her. The answer in his eyes was yes, but the answer in his voice was a lie meant to protect her. No, he said. You're safe. I'll make sure of it. The protective depth in his voice sent a shiver through her. Not of fear, but of something unfamiliar and unsettlingly warm. Her heart tugged toward him, even as her mind whispered caution. Something was wrong. Something was watching. Something was coming. And she wasn't sure Holden could keep hiding it from her much longer. The moon hung low over Crestwell Ranch, turning the fields silver and soft. Inside the kitchen, the warm glow of a single light cast long shadows on the walls as Davisha poured hot water into 2 mugs. She had trouble sleeping. Too many questions. Too many thoughts swirling at once. Holden stepped in quietly, as if drawn by the same restlessness. You're up too? She asked softly. He nodded. Couldn't sleep. There was no tension in his voice, Just truth. Davisha handed him a cup of chamomile tea, their fingers brushing gently. He didn't move away. Instead, he let the warmth linger between them. They sat at the wooden table, their mugs steaming. What kept you awake? Holden asked. Davisha traced the rim of her cup. Sometimes the past echoes, even when you're trying to start over. Holden's gaze softened. I understand. His voice wasn't just empathetic. It held a quiet ache, as if he knew the weight of starting over far too well. Davisha smiled faintly. I didn't expect this place to feel so emotional. What do you mean? It's peaceful. But it's the kind of peaceful that forces you to face things you tried to bury. Holden inhaled slowly, staring at the moonlit window. This house does that. Davisha tilted her head. Does it do that to you too? Holden didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached for his mug, but his hand trembled slightly. When he set it back down, the table creaked under the weight of his silence. She reached across the table and touched his hand gently. Just a light, careful gesture. His fingers tightened around hers. Not possessively, not urgently, but like he needed the grounding. The air thickened. Not dangerous, not uncomfortable. Just charged with two hearts leaning closer without either fully stepping in. You can tell me, you know, she whispered. Holden's gaze lifted to hers, intense, searching, vulnerable. Maybe someday, he murmured. He didn't pull his hand away. He didn't guard himself. He simply held her fingers with a quiet longing neither of them dared to name. Outside, the wind brushed against the windows like an old friend passing by. Inside, Davisha and Holden shared silence that felt like the beginning of something neither could stop if they tried. They moved into the living room, the fire reduced to warm embers. Holden sat on the couch, leaning forward, forearms resting on his knees. Davisha took the seat beside him, close enough to feel his heat but not touching. He stared into the fading fire, as if searching its glow for strength. There are things about my life, he began quietly, that I can't explain yet. Not because I don't want to, but because I'm afraid of what it might mean for you. Davisha felt her chest tighten. Holden, I'm not asking for all your secrets. His eyes met hers then, a long, deep, unbroken stare. There's danger connected to me, he whispered, and I don't want it touching you. She held his gaze, refusing to flinch. You're not pushing me away. Holden swallowed hard. I'm trying to protect you. From what? His silence spoke louder than any answer. He looked at her the way a man looks when he's been starved of connection for too long, when he finally finds someone who makes breathing feel easy again. Davisha leaned in unconsciously, drawn by the vulnerability in his eyes. Holden didn't move, didn't blink, didn't look away. Davisha, he breathed. Her name fell from his lips like a confession. The space between them shrank, not physically, emotionally, like two souls shifting toward alignment. She whispered, You don't have to be alone in whatever this is. His chest rose sharply, his breath uneven in a way she had never heard from him. He reached up and touched a loose curl near her cheek, letting his fingers linger for just a second. That single touch melted something inside her. Holden Cresswell, the guarded, quiet, wounded man, was opening up, piece by piece, inches at a time, just for her. Later, when the silence settled again, Davisha hummed a soft tune under her breath. Holden looked over. What song is that? He asked. My mom used to sing it while she cooked, she said, smiling gently. A gospel hymn, one that always made her feel close to God. Can you sing it? Holden asked quietly. The request startled her, not because he asked, but because of how tender the question sounded, like he needed the song. She nodded and began singing softly, Guide my steps in your way, hold my heart when I stray. Her voice filled the room, warm, soulful, pure. Holden listened with an intensity she had never seen in a man. Not hunger, not desire, but reverence. He wasn't listening to the notes. He was listening to her. When she finished, Holden whispered, Your voice, it feels like peace I haven't known in years. Davisha's cheeks warmed. It reminds me of home. Do you miss it? She hesitated. I miss the good parts. Holden nodded slowly, then surprised her by asking, Can you teach me the song? A laugh escaped her, soft and genuine. Holden, you sing. He looked embarrassed. Rarely, very rarely. She slid closer, their knees brushing lightly. Then tonight is a first. She guided him through the melody, her hand brushing his arm gently as she steadied his rhythm. He followed her voice, deep and quiet, blending awkwardly at first. Then warmly, they sang together, their voices, one soft, one steady, intertwined like threads weaving connection across the silent room. When the song ended, Holden didn't speak. He simply watched her with eyes full of something unspoken and powerful. The night air carried them onto the porch, where the sky stretched wide and star-filled. Holden leaned on the railing. Davisha stood beside him, close enough to feel the heat from his arm. He exhaled shakily. "I don't remember the last time I felt this." She turned toward him. "This?" He didn't answer with words. Instead, he reached up slowly, cautiously, and let his fingers trace along her jawline, feather-light. Davisha's breath caught, the world narrowing to nothing but the warmth of his touch. He stepped closer, closing the space between them. His forehead pressed gently against hers, and both of them inhaled at the same time, breaths mixing, hearts thudding in unison. It was intimate, tender, more powerful than any kiss. But then, Holden froze. Davisha opened her eyes just as he pulled back slightly, eyes clouded with conflict. "I can't," he whispered. "Why?" she breathed. "Because if I cross that line, I won't be able to protect you the way I need to." Her heart clenched at the pain in his voice. He wanted her. That was clear, but something in his past held him back, something dark enough to make closeness feel dangerous. Davisha reached for his hand and squeezed. "Holden, I'm not afraid of you." He closed his eyes, pained. "But you should be afraid of the world around me." She shook her head gently. "I'm afraid of losing something before I even get the chance to hold it." His expression softened, beautifully, heartbreakingly. For a moment it seemed he would kiss her, but instead, he lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a soft PG kiss against her knuckles. A promise, a warning, a longing, all in one touch. Later that night, after Davisha went upstairs, Holden stepped out onto the porch again, unable to sleep, unable to steady his thoughts. A quiet engine approached. A courier van stopped at the gate. A man stepped out, dropped a small sealed envelope into the mailbox, and drove off without a word. Holden's blood ran cold. He retrieved the envelope, tearing it open with trembling hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a surveillance photo, time-stamped, zoomed in on Davisha leaving the bus station 2 days ago, and beneath it a typed message, "We know where you are, and who you care about." Holden's jaw clenched so tightly it ached. He looked up at the window where Davisha slept, unaware of the danger closing in. His hands shook as he crumpled the paper. He went behind the barn, struck a match, and held the flame to the classified document. The fire curled the edges, swallowing the threat piece by piece. Holden watched until every corner turned to ash. Not even the night wind dared to blow as he whispered to himself, "I will not let them touch her." The moon flickered behind passing clouds and Holden knew the storm was coming, and he would burn the world down before letting it reach Davisha. The next morning started quietly, but something felt different. Davisha stepped onto the porch, hugging her sweater close as the Wyoming breeze whispered across the land. Normally, the morning air felt refreshing, grounding, but today it pressed on her chest with a strange heaviness she couldn't explain. Holden was already outside, checking the horses. She watched him from the porch, the careful, deliberate way he moved, the tightness in his shoulders that wasn't there days ago. Ever since last night, ever since the nearly confessed kiss, ever since that envelope arrived, Holden had changed. He wasn't avoiding her outright, but something in him had shifted, subtly pulling away, like a man reinforcing walls he had begun letting crumble. Davisha walked toward him slowly. "Morning." Holden looked up, his expression softening for just a second. "Morning." But then the shutters closed again, the guarded expression returning as fast as it had vanished. "You okay?" she asked quietly. He nodded, too quickly. "Just tired." A lie. She knew it as surely as she knew her own name. Holden Cresswell didn't get tired. He carried tension like armor, the same way some men carried tools. Davisha stepped closer. "Holden, talk to me." He paused mid-motion, hand resting on the horse's back, his gaze fixed on a distant point across the ranch. "It's nothing you need to worry about," he said softly. That sentence, gentle, protective but distant, cut deeper than she expected, as if he was slowly stepping backward from whatever connection had begun forming between them. Davisha swallowed. "Did I do something wrong?" Holden turned sharply, worry flickering across his eyes. "No. You did nothing wrong." "Then why does it feel like you're pulling away from me?" His breath hitched. "Barely. but enough for her to recognize the truth. He was pulling away, and not because he wanted to, but because he feared what staying close to her would cost. He opened his mouth to answer, but the words died. Instead, he looked out over the land, tightening his jaw. Davisha felt the warning press into her intuition. A quiet whisper inside her, danger is near. Something is coming. She had always trusted her instincts. They kept her safe back home, guided her through relationships, jobs, and heartbreak. And now, that same instinct hummed through her veins. "Holden," she said softly. "Whatever's going on, I can feel it. Please don't shut me out." He looked at her again, eyes deeply conflicted. "I don't want to," he whispered, "but you deserve peace. And the truth I carry doesn't bring peace." Davisha's chest tightened. It wasn't rejection. It was fear. Fear of losing her, or leading danger to her door. And deep inside, she knew the past Holden feared wasn't far away anymore. It was moving closer. Later that afternoon, Holden inspected the fence line while Davisha walked the opposite side of the pasture. The sky hung thick with clouds, the air heavy, signaling a storm brewing somewhere beyond the mountains. Davisha humored the tasks he assigned her, though she could tell he was trying to keep her occupied and keep her away from worry. But his worry had a way of seeping through the ranch's atmosphere like smoke. Holden crouched near the fence and touched the ground. His expression changed instantly. He brushed the dirt again, more urgently this time, and ran his fingers along a faint indentation. Tire tread, not from their vehicles, not from Toller, not from any neighbor. A small, compact off-road tire, narrow, specialized, used by surveillance or tactical units trying to keep a low profile. Holden's heart lurched. He scanned the area and saw another mark pressed deeper into the soil. A boot print. Not cowboy boots. Not ranch worker boots. Military grade. Silent tread. Someone had been here. Inside the property boundary. Close enough to see the house. Holden rose slowly, the dread settling cold into his stomach. He followed the footprints, careful, calculating, until they dead-ended near the tree line. Another broken twig. A glove fiber snagged on the fence wire, and a faint metallic scent he knew too well. They were close, closer than ever. He felt Davisha approaching before she even spoke. "Holden, what is it?" He turned quickly, blocking her path. "Stay back." Her brows furrowed. "What did you find?" "Nothing you need to worry about," he said again. But this time, the tremor in his voice betrayed him. She stepped around him anyway. Stubborn, brave, refusing to be shielded from things that concerned her safety. Her eyes scanned the dirt. "What is that?" she whispered, pointing to the tire mark. Holden didn't want her to know, but he couldn't lie. "Not now." "That," he said slowly, "is a visitor we didn't invite." The tension in his voice made her chest tighten. "Is someone watching us?" Holden clenched his jaw. "Not us. Me." Davisha's breath caught. The man who cooked her dinner, who held her hand in silence, who almost kissed her on the porch, was being hunted. By who? And why? How long had this been happening? "Holden," she whispered, voice shaking. "What aren't you telling me?" He looked at the tracks again, then toward the house, calculating routes, risks, possible breach points. He wasn't just on edge. He was preparing. "Whatever comes next," he said quietly, "you stay close to me. Understand?" Davisha nodded slowly, fear mixing with something deeper, a fierce protectiveness of her own. Holden's past wasn't just moving. It had arrived. The storm broke at sundown. Thunder cracked across the sky, shaking the windows. Lightning flashed bright white over the fields, illuminating the ranch in powerful bursts. Davisha stood on the porch, breath caught at the sight of the trembling horizon. Wyoming storms were different. Violent, sweeping, raw. She wrapped her arms around herself. Holden stepped beside her. Storm came in fast. "It's loud," she admitted, trying to steady her voice. Lightning struck again, closer this time. The crack made her jump back with a gasp. Holden moved instantly. His hands caught her waist, firm, steadying, pulling her into his chest. Not romantically, not intentionally, but instinctively, like his body reacted before his mind could intervene. Davisha's breath hitched. Her hands pressed against his chest, his warmth wrapped around her like a shield. For a moment, neither moved. Rain crashed against the roof. Thunder growled overhead like a warning from the sky itself. But all Davisha could feel was Holden, solid, protective, trembling ever so slightly with the effort of holding himself back. "You okay?" he murmured. "Yes," she breathed, though her pulse told a different story. Another flash of lightning lit his face, highlighting the tension in his jaw, the intensity in his eyes as he realized how close they stood. Slowly, very slowly, Holden loosened his hold. But his hands didn't drop immediately. They lingered on her waist, as if torn between letting go and pulling her closer. Davisha swallowed. "Holden." He stepped back a fraction, but not far. "I didn't mean to startle you." "You didn't," she whispered. "You held me." His eyes softened, dangerously tender. "It was instinct," he said quietly. "A protective instinct," she replied. Lightning flashed again, illuminating their faces inches apart. Davisha felt the pull, the same magnetic draw from the porch the night before. His breath mingled with hers, warm and uneven. But this time, Holden forced himself to step back fully. "Let's get inside," he said softly. "Storm's getting worse." Davisha followed him in, her heart still thudding from far more than thunder. The storm calmed around midnight, rainfall tapering into soft taps on the roof. The ranch grew quiet again. Too quiet. Davisha tried to sleep, but her nerves buzzed with something unshakable. She finally went downstairs for water. Holden wasn't asleep either. He stood at the living room window, posture rigid, every muscle alert. "What is it?" she whispered. He didn't turn. "Something's out there." Davisha moved beside him, peering out into the darkness. Rain clouds drifted, revealing a sliver of moonlight over the fields. Then she heard it, a faint mechanical hum. Soft, precise, unnatural. "What is that?" she asked, fear tightening her voice. Holden's jaw hardened. "Drone." Her breath caught. "Like a hobby one?" "No." His voice dropped. "Military grade," and then she saw it. A small black device hovering 20 feet above the tree line. It moved with calculated precision, angling toward the ranch house as if scanning it. Davisha backed away from the window. "Holden, this isn't normal." He grabbed her hand and pulled her back, shielding her as the drone swept closer. Without warning, it clicked, a soft metallic sound, then veered away, disappearing into the clouds as silently as it came. Davisha stared at him, terrified. "Why are they watching us?" Holden looked at the empty sky, expression dark with certainty. "They're not watching us," he said. "They're confirming, I'm here." The storm may have passed outside, but inside, a different kind of storm had begun. 30 minutes later, Holden was outside, pacing in the wet grass with his phone pressed hard to his ear. Davisha watched from the doorway, her heart twisting. "Toller," Holden said, voice low and urgent. "It's time." Whatever Toller said on the other end made Holden exhale sharply. "No. This wasn't a warning," Holden continued. "A drone swept the house. They stepped onto the land earlier today. They're escalating." Davisha stepped closer, trying to hear better without interrupting. Holden stopped pacing, muscles locked in tension. "Yes," he said. "I'm sure." There was a pause. The wind brushed through the soaked grass, and lightning flickered weakly in the far distance. Then Holden spoke the words Davisha feared most. "They've found me," he whispered. "All of them." Davisha's stomach dropped. Toller's muffled voice echoed urgently through the phone. Holden nodded grimly. "I'll do what I can on my end. Just get here by morning." He hung up slowly, staring into the dark as if the shadows were gathering enemies. Davisha stepped onto the porch. "Holden, who exactly found you?" His shoulders rose, fell. He turned toward her, and for the first time since she met him, Holden Crestwell looked like a man facing a war he had hoped he'd never see again. "Those I exposed," he said softly. "Those I ran from, those who don't forgive." Davisha felt the world tilt beneath her feet. And Holden whispered the final truth. "And they're not here to negotiate, Davisha. They're here to finish what they started." The ranch was quieter than usual that night. Too quiet. The wind barely brushed the grass. The horses shifted nervously in the distance. Even the air felt charged, as if the land itself sensed a disruption coming. Davisha stood near the back window, unable to sleep. Her nerves hadn't settled since the drone flew over the property. She hugged her arms tightly, staring into the moonlit dark. A flicker of movement caught her eye. At first, she thought it was just a shadow, but then it moved again, slow, deliberate, purposeful. Someone was out there. She stepped closer to the glass, pressing her hand against it. A man, dressed in dark gear, silent as the night itself. She barely had time to breathe before another figure appeared near the barn. Her heart crashed into her ribs. Holden. She tried to call, but her voice cracked. She forced out a louder scream. Holden. The shout tore through the house. Holden sprinted from the hallway before she could turn around. What happened? There, outside. She pointed, trembling. He moved behind her in one swift motion, assessing the direction she indicated. The moment his eyes locked onto the shadow near the barn, everything about him shifted. The man she'd grown close to became someone else entirely, focused, fierce, tactical. Get away from the window, he said urgently, pulling her gently but firmly back. She stumbled into him, and he steadied her without looking away from the threat. Stay behind me, he whispered. Another figure appeared near the horse pen. Davisha's breath froze. They're here. Holden muttered. Faster than I expected. He grabbed the rifle hidden behind the cabinet, not with panic, but precision. A man who had done this before. Davisha stared at him in fear and awe. What do they want? Me. Just that one word. Cold. Heavy. Final. He opened the back door just enough to listen. Footsteps. Soft. Muffled. Trained. 3 of them. Possibly 4. Holden shut the door quietly and turned to her, eyes sharp. No matter what happens, stay close. Davisha clenched her fists. Holden, The lights flickered. She gasped. What was? Power interruption, he said. They're breaching the lines. A shadow passed by the window. Davisha grabbed Holden's arm. Please tell me we're not surrounded. Holden didn't answer. Because they were. He moved her behind him once more, gripping the rifle with both hands. Stay quiet, he whispered. Then a distant whistle sliced through the night. Holden swore under his breath. They're signaling each other. They're moving in. Before she could respond, a loud thud hit the porch. Davisha screamed again. Holden's eyes flared with adrenaline. It's starting. Holden pulled Davisha into his office, shutting the door softly behind them. He set the rifle aside just long enough to face her fully. No more secrets, he said quietly. You deserve the truth before this escalates. Davisha's throat tightened. Holden, what are they trying to do to you? He exhaled slowly, bracing himself. You asked me once what I left behind, he began. Why I built a life of silence. Why I disappeared. She nodded, eyes fixed on him. I didn't leave by choice, he said. I ran. Her breath caught. I used to work inside a federal intelligence partnership, he continued, voice low. We handled financial crimes, political corruption, international laundering, things that never reached the public. Davisha swallowed. And I uncovered evidence that a U.S. Senator, Barnes Hale, was funneling government contracts through a private dynasty. They were forging humanitarian records, rerouting funds offshore, and using an intelligence group to eliminate anyone who got too close. The intelligence group. The one after you now? Yes. He paced, unable to stay still. When I brought the evidence forward, it never reached the courtroom. The senator's dynasty had already infiltrated every level. Judges, investigators, analysts, even my own department. Davisha covered her mouth. One night, Holden continued, I came home to find an operative waiting inside. I only survived because Toller arrived early for a meeting. Davisha's heart dropped. They tried to kill you? Holden nodded. Shot me twice. Toller dragged me out while I was bleeding out on the floor. We faked my death, erased my records, and I disappeared into Wyoming. She blinked hard, tears forming. All this time. You've been living in hiding because of them? Yes. And they're back. Holden looked toward the window, jaw tight. They never stopped looking. They slowed down, but never stopped. Davisha stepped closer. Holden, you should have told me. He met her gaze, exhausted, tense, afraid for her more than himself. I didn't want to pull you into my nightmare, he whispered. You deserve peace, Davisha. Not this. She shook her head. Peace means nothing if you're dying alone. Holden froze. If something happens to you, she said, voice trembling. I couldn't live with that. The words tore something open inside him, something he had sealed shut years ago. Davisha, he whispered, voice breaking. A sharp sound outside snapped him back into focus. He grabbed the rifle. They're coming closer. There's no time. But Holden, I need you to stay with me, no matter what happens. Davisha nodded, wiping her tears. I'm not going anywhere. The house shook as something heavy landed near the barn. Davisha jumped, clutching Holden's arm. "They're inside the perimeter," Holden whispered. Fear crawled up her spine. "Holden, maybe I should hide." "No." He cupped her shoulders. "If they find you alone, it's worse." Her heart hammered. "I'm not trained for this." "I know," he said. "That's why I'll protect you." She stared at him, the man she barely knew a month ago, yet trusted more deeply than anyone she'd known for years. "You're shaking," Holden murmured. "So are you," she whispered back. His lips twitched with pain. "I'm shaking because I don't want to lose you." Her breath hitched. "You won't." A loud clank echoed from outside. Davisha flinched, burying herself briefly in his chest. Holden wrapped an arm around her instinctively, fiercely, like a man holding the one thing he couldn't afford to lose. "I can leave," she whispered suddenly. "If I leave, maybe they won't." "No." His voice broke into a harsh whisper. "They'll kill you to hurt me." Davisha's breath froze. Holden grabbed her hands. "Look at me." She did. "Leaving is not an option," he said firmly. "You staying close gives me a chance to protect you. If you run, they'll hunt us both." Her knees weakened. "Holden, I don't know how to do this. I've never fought anything in my life except bad decisions." Holden almost smiled at that, almost, but his eyes stayed intense. "You don't need to fight. You just need to trust me." She nodded, tears pooling again. "I do, and I trust you," he added softly. Before she could respond, the lights flickered again. Davisha gasped. "They're messing with our grid," Holden said. "Trying to flush us out." Davisha clutched his sleeve. "Holden, I'm terrified." He pulled her into a tight embrace, not romantic, not gentle, but desperate. "I know," he whispered into her hair. "I'm terrified too," but she felt him inhale deeply, steadying himself. "I'll keep you safe," he said, "even if it costs me everything." Holden led Davisha toward the barn, not to run, but to flank the operatives. Moving through the shadows, he held her hand tightly, keeping her behind him with every careful step. The barn door creaked softly as Holden pushed it open. Inside, the smell of hay and leather felt familiar, comforting, until a soft crunch echoed behind them. Holden spun. A man stepped out from the shadows, dressed in tactical gear, a mask covering half his face, a weapon drawn. Davisha's blood turned to ice. Holden shoved her behind him instantly. "Stay down." The operative aimed. "Crestwell, alive and breathing. The senator will be pleased." Holden tightened his stance. "You're trespassing." The operative chuckled darkly. "You're still as arrogant as your report said." Davisha trembled behind Holden, clutching the back of his shirt. She felt him shield her completely. Shoulders squared, chest firm, body angled to absorb any impact. "You won't touch her," Holden said, voice low. "Oh, I won't." The operative sneered, stepping closer. Holden aimed his rifle. Fast, controlled, deadly calm. "Back away," he growled. The operative smirked and lunged. Holden fired, a single warning shot, forcing the man to dive aside. Hay scattered across the floor. Davisha screamed. The operative recovered quickly, swinging his weapon toward them. Holden grabbed Davisha, twisting her behind a support beam. He shielded her with his entire body, absorbing the blow of the operative crashing into them. The man fought viciously, trying to reach Davisha, but Holden slammed him into the beam. "Don't look at her," Holden roared, pinning him. Davisha covered her ears, shaking. The operative struggled. "She's leverage." Holden struck him with the barrel of the rifle. "You say her name again, and you don't leave this barn." The operative dropped his weapon, barely conscious. Holden grabbed Davisha's hand, pulling her out. "We have to move." "Holden, your arm." "I'm fine." But he wasn't. His forearm bled where the operative's knife grazed him. They ran through the rain-soaked yard toward the house. Lightning struck somewhere close. The ranch shook. This wasn't surveillance anymore. This was war. They burst through the back door, slamming it shut behind them. Holden locked every bolt with shaking hands. Davisha grabbed his injured arm. "Holden, you're hurt." He collapsed onto the couch, breath ragged, adrenaline draining fast. Davisha knelt beside him and pressed a towel to the wound. For the first time since she met him, Holden looked defeated. "I failed," he whispered. "I told myself I could keep you safe, but they stepped onto my land. They came for you." His voice cracked, raw, painful. Davisha cupped his face. gently, tenderly. You didn't fail me. You saved my life. His eyes softened with exhaustion and emotion. I can't lose you, he confessed, voice breaking. I can't. I won't survive it. Davisha's chest tightened. Holden. He leaned forward impulsively and kissed her. Not desperate, not reckless, but deep, vulnerable. The kind of kiss that said everything he couldn't put into words. She kissed him back, fingers trembling against his jaw. His hands slid to her waist, pulling her closer, not in a sensual way, but in a way that said, stay. Don't leave me. I need you. Their breaths mingled as he pressed his forehead to hers. Davisha, he whispered, broken and honest. You're the first light I've had in years. She held him tightly. You're not alone anymore. Not in this, not in anything. Another kiss, deeper this time, emotional, lingering. Holden wrapped his arms around her, pulling her into a full embrace. She held on to him just as tightly, feeling his heartbeat steady against hers. He exhaled softly, sinking into her warmth. And that night, their bond crossed a threshold words couldn't capture. They stayed wrapped in each other's arms until sleep found them, not out of passion, but out of safety, closeness, and emotional surrender. And though no details were spoken, what happened between them was private, tender, deep, and meant only for them. The threat outside grew stronger, but inside, for the first time since the danger began, Holden Crestwell wasn't facing it alone. The morning after the attack felt unreal. The ranch was still but not peaceful, the kind of silence that follows chaos when the world waits for the next move. Davisha woke before sunrise, wrapped in Holden's shirt. She sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing her arms as the Wyoming air drifted through the cracked window. Last night's fear still hovered, yet something else lingered too, the closeness. They shared, the raw emotion, the truth that neither of them could hide anymore. Holden stepped into the doorway, freshly showered, his arm bandaged from the night before. He looked exhausted, but steady. Couldn't sleep? He asked softly. Could you? She replied. He shook his head once. Then his eyes dropped for a moment, as if weighing a choice too heavy to speak out loud. Davisha, we need to talk. She stood slowly. Is something wrong? He took her hands, warm and strong despite the tremor in them. They know who you are now, he said. They saw your face. They heard your voice. You're not a bystander anymore. You're a target. Her breath stilled. I can protect you here, Holden continued, but legally, strategically, there's one thing that shields you better than any fence, any rifle, or any witness protection program. His voice lowered. Becoming my wife. The words dropped into the room with a quiet force. Davisha blinked at him, stunned. Holden, is this because of last night? It's because of everything, he answered. Because I love you, because I trust you, because the moment they came onto my land, you became part of the war I tried to keep you out of. He squeezed her hands. Marriage ties you to me, legally, politically, and strategically. They can't use you the same way. They can't harm you without consequences. Davisha searched his eyes, and for the first time she saw something beyond fear. Hope. Fragile, but real. You want to marry me? Today? She whispered. Yes, Holden said. Before sunset. Before they decide their next move. Her heartbeat raced, not from fear this time, but from the honesty in his voice. She stepped closer. Holden, if I say yes, it's not just for protection. His breath hitched. If you say yes, it's everything. Davisha swallowed hard, then nodded. I'm saying yes. Holden exhaled. Relief, gratitude, love all blending into one breath. He pulled her into his arms and held her as if the world were collapsing, and she was the only solid thing left. By afternoon, Toller arrived with a local officiant who owed him a favor. No guests, no decorations, no music, just a small clearing behind the barn, framed by the early evening sky. As fate would have it, the sun dipped low and the moon rose red over the ridge, an eerie reminder of the danger surrounding them, but also a symbol of courage. A blood-tinged sky watching over their vows. Davisha wore a simple cream dress Toller dug out from storage, soft, flowing, old-fashioned but beautiful. Holden stood in a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled, bandage showing. Eyes locked on her like she was the only thing worth surviving for. Do you, Holden Crestwell, the officiant began, take Davisha Ray to be your lawful wife? Holden didn't blink. I do. His voice didn't shake. Do you, Davisha Ray, take Holden Crestwell to be your lawful husband? Davisha felt tears rise. I do. Their hands joined, warm, trembling, desperate. The officiant spoke the final words. "I pronounce you husband and wife." Holden cupped Davisha's face, gently. "May I?" he whispered. She nodded. His kiss was soft, slow, reverent. Nothing like their frantic moments of fear the night before. This was a vow sealed with tenderness. The blood moon hovered above them, glowing deep and fierce, as if blessing a love born in danger but strengthened by truth. They were married now, bound by choice, circumstance, and something neither of them could deny. They walked back toward the house, hands still intertwined, when Toller stepped aside with Holden. The look on his face said everything. Trouble hadn't paused to congratulate them. "Toller?" Holden asked quietly. "What is it?" Toller didn't answer until they were inside the barn, away from Davisha's ears. "They upgraded the threat," Toller said, pale under the dim light. "How?" Holden demanded. "They've shifted primary focus." Holden stiffened. "Toller, say it." Toller swallowed hard. "They want her now too." Silence. Cold, slicing silence. "She has nothing to do with them," Holden growled. "They don't care," Toller replied. "They think she's leverage." Holden's jaw locked so tight a muscle twitched. Toller continued. "Their new directive is simple. Bring in Crestwell by any means. If the woman interferes, use her." Holden slammed his fist into the wall so hard dust rained from the rafters. "No," he said, voice shaking with fury. "They're not touching her. Not one hair." "Holden, I mean it," he snapped. "You tell me they're coming for me? Fine. You tell me they're coming for my wife?" His voice cracked on the last word. "They'll have to bury me before they get near her." Toller stepped closer. "I believe you. But you need to understand how deep this goes. The senator's people aren't just political. They're funded, connected, protected. If they think she's your weak spot—" "She's not a weak spot," Holden interrupted sharply. "She's my strength, and I'll protect her with everything I have." Outside the barn, Davisha had approached silently, catching only the last part of their conversation. Toller lowered his voice. "We need a plan. They're escalating." Holden nodded. "We'll prepare." "But Toller—" "Yeah? We move her nowhere without me." Toller sighed. "I figured—" Holden turned, only to find Davisha standing at the doorway, her eyes full of worry. "Davisha," he began. "Leverage?" she asked softly. Holden closed his eyes for a moment, then walked toward her. "I don't want you afraid," he said. "I'm already afraid," she replied. "What I want is honesty." Holden swallowed hard. "They want to use you to break me," he admitted. "But they won't." Davisha's gaze softened, fear and love intertwined. "You shouldn't have to fight alone," she said. "I'm not alone now," he whispered. She reached for his hand, squeezing it. "Then let's face it together." 3 states away, in a high-rise office overlooking Washington, D.C., Senator Barnes Hale stood in front of a glass wall, straightening his cufflinks with quiet confidence. The room around him buzzed with controlled chaos, analysts tapping away at encrypted screens, assistants delivering classified documents, security details scanning the perimeter with military focus. But Hale? He adjusted his tie as though preparing for a televised interview. "Senator," his aide said quietly, "our ground team in Wyoming has confirmed partial contact." "Partial?" Hale asked without turning. "Yes. They saw him. They engaged lightly. But Crestwell fought back." Hale finally faced him, lips curving into something between amusement and irritation. "Holden always was stubborn," he murmured. "It's why he made the perfect analyst. Too bad he forgot the golden rule." The aide blinked. "Which one, sir?" "Don't expose the hand that feeds you." Another aide hurried in with a tablet. "Sir, more intel. Crestwell is no longer alone." Hale raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" "He has a wife now." The senator paused, interest flickering across his eyes. "A wife? Crestwell? That's unexpected." The aide handed him the tablet. Hale scrolled through the images, grainy surveillance captures showing. Davisha near the barn, Holden stepping protectively in front of her. Hale's expression darkened. "She looks important to him," the aide said. "Oh, she is," Hale replied. "Otherwise he wouldn't have let her near the ranch. Holden guard dogs his life more than anyone I know." The senator tapped the screen, enlarging Davisha's photo. "Pretty," he said. "More importantly, useful." The room fell silent. Hale nodded once. Prioritize her. Crestwell won't run far if we have the wife. Understood, sir. And send the FBI contact the additional payment, Hale added. We'll need every file they ever sealed on him. As the aides dispersed, Hale returned to the window, sipping his drink. The city lights reflected in the glass made him look almost regal. Almost. Holden, he murmured. You should have stayed buried. Back in Wyoming, Holden's laptop pinged with a warning he hadn't heard in years. A silent alert buried in encrypted files only he and 2 dead analysts knew existed. Davisha jumped. What was that? Holden's face drained of color. They're tapping my old systems. He opened the laptop, fingers flying across the keys. Lines of code scrolled rapidly, sequences, signatures, pings. Toller leaned over his shoulder. Is that? Yes, Holden said. Someone accessed my sealed archives. Davisha watched anxiously. Can they see where we are? Not directly, Holden replied, but they're mining everything else. What, everything? She asked. Holden's jaw tensed. My old reports, contacts, hacking logs, surveillance records. They're reconstructing the entire collapse. And why does that matter now? Davisha pushed. Toller answered for him. Because if they can rebuild Holden's old network, they can predict his next move. They can anticipate him. Holden nodded, still typing. They're using government contractors. That's the only group with access deep enough to pull this info. Can you stop them? Davisha asked. Holden exhaled sharply. No. But I can slow them. Toller pointed at the screen. Holden, look. They found the failed assassination file. Davisha froze. What failed assassination file? Holden looked up slowly, regret in every line on his face. The night they shot me, he said quietly. There's a file that recorded everything. Ballistics, trajectory, audio logs. I deleted it years ago. But they recovered it, Toller added. Davisha whispered. So they know exactly how you escaped? Yes, Holden said. And now they'll use that to calculate how to trap me. He shut the laptop, frustration boiling beneath the surface. They're not just hunting me, Holden said. They're rebuilding the blueprint that once protected me. Davisha placed her hand over his. Then we'll rewrite it. He looked at her, surprised by her resolve. We? Holden asked. Yes, she said firmly. I'm not hiding in a corner while you fight a battle that belongs to both of us now. The night grew colder as Davisha stepped onto the porch, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. The blood moon still hung in the sky, fading now but powerful. Holden joined her quietly, the weight of everything pressing down on him. You should sleep, he said softly. So should you, she replied. But neither moved. After a long silence, Holden finally spoke. Davisha, there's something you need to hear. Toller and I talked. Strategically, it's safer for you to leave the ranch. Go somewhere hidden. Somewhere off their radar. Davisha's heart clenched. And you? I'll stay, he said. Face them head on. Draw the heat away from you. She turned sharply. No, Davisha. No, she repeated, stepping closer. You don't get to make that choice alone. It's for your safety. And what about your life? She countered. What about the fact that I'm your wife now? What about the vows we just made? Holden looked away, pain tightening his features. If they catch me, he whispered, they'll use you. They'll hurt you. I can't live with that. Davisha cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. You listen to me, Holden Crestwell. I walked into this with open eyes. I married you knowing the danger. I'm not running because fear showed up at our door. He swallowed hard. She pressed her forehead to his. I choose you, she whispered. Even if danger chooses us. Holden's breath trembled. Davisha, she continued, voice steady. I'm not leaving you to fight alone. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not ever. He pulled her into a fierce embrace, one arm around her waist, the other at the back of her head, holding her as if he were afraid she might disappear. She held him just as tightly. Two souls pressed together against a world determined to tear them apart. When they finally pulled back, Davisha brushed her thumb across his cheek. Whatever comes next, she said softly, we face it as husband and wife. Holden nodded, eyes shining with emotion he couldn't speak out loud. For the first time since the nightmare began, he didn't feel doomed. He felt powerful. Because she chose him, and he chose her. And love, dangerous, fragile, stubborn, had become their greatest weapon. The night started quiet, too quiet. A stillness settled over Crestwell Ranch that felt unnatural, as if Wyoming itself was holding its breath. Davisha stood in the kitchen rinsing a mug when the overhead lights flickered once. Then again, then everything went black. The hum of the refrigerator died. The soft whirring of the AC unit disappeared. Silence swallowed the house whole. "Holden?" Davisha called, gripping the counter. Holden stepped quickly from the hallway, flashlight already in hand. He didn't look confused. He looked prepared. "Stay close to me," he said. She moved to him without question. "This isn't a storm," Holden muttered, heading for the breaker box. "We're not due for anything severe tonight." Toller burst through the back door, breathing hard. "Grid's down," he said. "All of it." "What do you mean, all?" Davisha asked. "The ranch, the barn, the perimeter lights, the cameras, everything." Toller pulled off his hat. This wasn't a coincidence. Holden knelt by the breaker panels, opening them quickly. He aimed the flashlight at the wires and swore under his breath. "What is it?" Davisha asked, stepping closer. "The lines were cut," Holden said. "Clean cut. Professional. They knew where to strike." A cold rush moved through Davisha's body. "How long ago?" Toller asked. 15 minutes at most," Holden replied. "They're close." Toller's jaw tightened. "They're signaling the start." "No," Holden said quietly. "They're signaling that we're already in the middle of it." He stood, wiping dust from his hands. Davisha swallowed. "What do we do?" Holden walked to her, placing one steady hand on her arm. "First, we don't panic," he said. "Second, we prepare." "Prepare for what?" she whispered. "An attack," Holden answered. He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't soften it. He said it plainly, because lies were useless now. The blood moon still clung to the horizon, fading but present, casting the entire ranch in a reddish glow. It made the silence unnerving. Holden grabbed 2 emergency bags from the hall closet, tossing one to Toller. "They wouldn't cut our power unless they wanted to control the environment," Holden said. "No lights, no cameras, no alarms. They're blindfolding us before they strike." Davisha tightened her arms around herself. "Why tonight?" she asked. Holden met her eyes. "Because they know we're married now." Davisha froze. "They timed this." "Yes," Holden said. "They wanted you here. Vulnerable. Unprotected." Her stomach turned. "They're not just after me anymore," Holden continued. "They want the woman who changed my choices." Toller stepped back outside, scanning the darkness with a pair of night goggles. "Holden," he said in a low voice. "The ridgeline. Something's moving." Davisha looked up, heart pounding. The shadows swayed unnaturally, too controlled to be wind, too precise to be deer. Holden felt it too. A shift in the air. The feeling of being watched. "They're here," he murmured. The dynasty had made their first move, and it was only the beginning. The ranch lights were out, but the moon gave enough faint glow to see shapes, blurred, distant, unsettling. Holden stood at the porch railing, scanning the trees. "I need to check the perimeter," he said quietly. Davisha's pulse ticked faster. Something felt off, not the fear itself, but the direction of it. As if danger wasn't out there, but aiming directly at them. "Holden," she whispered, "don't stand there." "It's fine," he said, leaning slightly over the railing for a clearer view. Every nerve in her body screamed, "Move him." "Holden, step back," she said more urgently. He didn't. Something inside her surged, stronger than fear, deeper than logic. She grabbed Holden by the shirt collar and yanked him backward. "What are you—" he began. A sharp crack split the air. The porch pillar behind him exploded in a burst of splintered wood. Holden froze. Davisha covered her mouth. Toller spun around. "Sniper." Holden pulled Davisha instantly behind the nearest interior wall. "You saved my life," he breathed, staring at her with a mixture of shock and gratitude. "I felt it," Davisha whispered shakily. "I didn't hear anything, but I felt it. Something told me you were exposed." Holden brushed a trembling hand through her curls. "Instinct," he whispered. "You trusted it. You trusted me. You trusted us." Heavy footsteps sounded near the barn, shadows darting between the horses' stalls. "We need the truck," Holden said. Another gunshot cracked the air, this time hitting the metal wind vane, sending it spinning off into the dark. Davisha flinched. Holden held her tighter. "They've got a position on the north fence," Toller said. "Sharpshooter. Military trained. Not syndicate amateurs. Which means," Holden added, "we're dealing with the Senator's elite team." Toller peered outside again. They're flushing us out. Holden grabbed his jacket and took Davisha's hand. We run. Now. Another shot hit the porch steps as if punctuating his words. They darted from cover to shadow, zigzagging toward the truck. Holden shielded Davisha with his body every time they crossed open ground. They leapt behind the barn as another bullet cracked against the tin siding. Holden, Davisha whispered, voice trembling. They're not warning shots. I know, he said, breath heavy. They're messages. Messages meant for him. He tightened his grip on her hand. But I'm not losing you. Not tonight. The moment they reached the truck, Holden shoved the keys into the ignition, started the engine, and slammed into gear. Buckle up, he ordered. Davisha clicked her seatbelt with shaky fingers. Toller leapt into the bed of the truck, pounding the roof. Move, Holden. Holden floored it. The truck shot down the dirt road, tires spinning up dust clouds as bullets pinged off rocks behind them. Davisha clutched the dashboard. Holden, how are they tracking us this fast? They know the land, Holden said, eyes narrowed. And they know me. He swerved sharply onto a narrow ranch trail, avoiding the main road. Davisha grabbed the handle above her window. Where did you learn to drive like this? Holden didn't answer immediately. Another vehicle's headlights flared behind them in the distance. They're gaining, Toller shouted. Holden's jaw clenched. Davisha, he said quietly. There's something about my past I didn't tell you. She looked at him, terrified but trusting. Tell me now. Holden cut the wheel hard, sending the truck drifting around a bend with precise control. I wasn't just a numbers analyst, he said. I was trained for extraction transport, driving operatives out of hostile zones. Davisha blinked. Extraction, like rescue missions. Yes, he said. And now we're the ones being extracted. The back road narrowed, flanked by steep cliffs on one side and dense timber on the other. Holden, this is too tight, Davisha cried. He pressed harder on the gas. They expect us to take open roads. They don't expect me to run through the old cattle trails. The pursuing vehicle sped up, gaining ground. Toller shouted, They're nearly on us. Holden took a breath. Davisha, hold on to me. She did. He jerked the wheel left, then right, then gunned the engine as the truck veered through a slanted path that dropped into a dry creek bed. The pursuing SUV overshot the turn and skidded toward a boulder, forced to slow down. Davisha exhaled shakily. You did that on purpose. Yes, Holden said. And it bought us 2 minutes. 2 minutes for what? She asked. Holden shifted gears. To disappear. The truck roared onto the next path, weaving through shadowed pine trees under a darkening Wyoming sky. Davisha stared at him, frightened, breathless, but in awe. Holden Cresswell wasn't running blindly. He was a man who had survived much worse. And tonight, he was fighting for the woman he loved. The truck eventually pulled into an abandoned ranger station deep in the trees. Holden cut the engine. Toller hopped down from the back, scanning the area. We should be safe for a few hours, Toller said. No signals, no heat signature, it's good cover. Davisha sank into the cool air, exhaling, though her nerves stayed tight. Holden checked his burner phone, a device he rarely used. No notifications. But when he lifted the lid of the station's old radio box, the static wasn't random. It pulsed. 3 short waves, 2 long. Holden's face fell. No, he whispered. Toller looked up. What is it? Someone pinged them, Holden said. This is a coded locator. Davisha stepped closer. You mean someone told the operatives where we are? Holden swallowed hard. Yes. Who? She asked. Holden stared at the little blinking radio unit, his expression crumbling as realization sunk in. Emmett. Davisha frowned. The friend you trusted. The one who helped hide your early files? Holden nodded slowly, devastation flickering through his eyes. He was my closest friend. He knew my escape routes, my emergency fail-safes. He told me he'd gone off the grid. Toller cursed. Holden. He sold you out. Davisha placed a hand on Holden's arm. I'm sorry, she whispered. Holden exhaled shakily. I don't understand why. I trusted him. I saved his life once. Toller paced. Everyone has a price, Holden. Or a fear. The dynasty could have threatened him, bribed him, pressured him. Holden slammed his fist into the station door, not in rage, but in grief. I'm not angry he betrayed me, Holden said softly. I'm angry he put Davisha in danger. Davisha slid her arms around him from behind, resting her cheek against his back. "You didn't put me in danger," she whispered. "Your enemies did." Holden closed his eyes. Toller stepped back inside. "We need to move. They'll be here in less than an hour." Holden nodded, his voice low but steady. "No more running blind. We strategize now." They gathered around the ranger station's dusty table. Holden spread out an old Wyoming survey map, marking routes with the edge of his knife. Toller pointed. "They'll box us in from the north and south." "I know," Holden said. "But they're expecting flight, not confrontation." Davisha sat beside him. "What are you planning?" Holden didn't look up. "To stop running." She placed a hand over his, grounding him. "Holden, think." "I'm thinking," he cut in, though not unkindly. "They'll keep coming until they break us, until they use you to shatter me." His jaw tightened. "I won't give them that chance," Davisha whispered. "What does that mean?" Holden finally met her gaze, eyes fierce, resolute, terrified only of losing her. "It means I go to them," he said. "On my terms." "No," Davisha breathed. "No, Holden. You can't walk into their hands." "I'm not walking in," he said. "I'm ending it." Toller exhaled. "Holden, this is suicide." "Not if I control the terrain," Holden said. "They expect the man who ran. They're not prepared for the man who fights back." Davisha's eyes glistened. "Holden, please. This isn't just about strategy. You're my husband. I can't lose you." He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing her cheek with a tenderness that made her heart twist. "You won't lose me," he whispered. "But I won't let you spend your life in fear because I'm too afraid to confront mine." She shook her head. "There has to be another way." Holden pressed his forehead to hers. "If I keep running, they win. If I hide, they win. If I let them hurt you," his voice cracked. "That is the only outcome I won't survive." Davisha clutched his shirt. "You said we face things together. And we will," he said softly. "But the final step, that's mine." Toller looked between them, then finally nodded. "We plan it right," Toller said. "No improvising. No hero moves. If you're going in, we go smart." Holden exhaled. "Thank you," he said quietly. Davisha wiped her eyes and steadied her breath. "If you're doing this," she said, voice firm, "I'm not staying behind." Holden shook his head. "Davisha, I'm not asking permission," she said, gripping his hand. "I'm telling you, my place is beside you." Holden looked at her, this woman who walked into his broken world and still chose him. He kissed her forehead deeply, letting the moment anchor him. "Then we fight together," he whispered. He folded the map, tucked it into his jacket, and stood tall, no longer the man running from a dynasty, but the man ready to end it. "It ends with them," Holden said quietly. "Or with me." Davisha stepped beside him. "No," she said, "it ends with us." The ranger station was cold, abandoned years ago, but Holden worked at the dusty wooden table, as if he were operating inside a federal command center. Davisha watched him connect an old encrypted drive to a burner laptop, hardware so outdated she didn't recognize half the ports. "What exactly are you trying to break into?" she asked quietly. Holden didn't look up. "The vault." "The what?" "My old division's shadow archive," he said, fingers flying across the keyboard. "Pre-scandal, pre-betrayal. Back when I still believed our work mattered." Davisha knelt beside him, brushing dust from the floor. "And what's inside this vault?" "Evidence," Holden replied. "Enough to drown the entire dynasty if it sees daylight." She placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "And you're going to pull it out alone?" Holden paused, just a flicker of vulnerability, before forcing his focus back to the screen. "This is the last thing they never wanted anyone to see, the senator especially. If I unlock this, I expose their secret funding, illegal surveillance programs, and every off-the-books operation they buried." Lines of code blinked rapidly across the screen. Davisha couldn't read them, but she could feel the tension radiating from him. "Holden, what if opening this puts you at more risk?" "It does," he admitted. "But everything we've been through, the ranch attack, the pursuit, Emmett's betrayal, it all leads back to these files." The computer beeped, a low chime that didn't sound friendly. Davisha tensed. "Is that good or bad?" "Bad," Holden muttered. "The vault has tripwire encryption. If I miskey anything, it wipes the drive and sends a silent alert to the original handlers. And that means that Hale will know exactly what I'm trying to open." Davisha exhaled slowly. "Can you do it?" she whispered. Holden cracked his knuckles, a habit she'd noticed he only did when terrified. I've opened it before, he said. Once. And the price you paid? Davisha asked gently. He swallowed. My career, my safety. My entire life. Davisha touched his hand. Then you're not doing this alone, Holden. He looked up, just for a heartbeat, long enough to let her strength settle inside him. Holden typed 3 more lines, waited, then heard another beep. He froze. The screen flashed, vault access, partial unlock. File fragments available. Davisha gasped. Does that mean? Yes, Holden breathed. I got inside. He opened the first recovered file. There they were. Evidence shards, illegal wire transfers, black budget allocations, coded mission logs. Davisha stared at the rows. This is enough to ruin him, she whispered. Holden nodded. And enough to make him desperate. Holden kept scrolling, breath becoming tight, shallow. The deeper he read, the worse his posture collapsed, shoulders curling inward, fingers trembling. Davisha noticed immediately. Holden, she whispered. Stop a moment. He didn't hear her, or didn't want to. His left hand began shaking harder. Holden, she repeated firmly, placing her hand over his. He jerked slightly, like a man pulled from a nightmare. Hey, Davisha said softly, but with authority. You're spiraling. Breathe with me. Holden closed his eyes, failing to steady himself. This file, he whispered. I remember these signatures, these missions. These were the orders I refused, the ones that cost me everything. His voice wavered, cracking like thin ice. Davisha stood and moved behind him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders, guiding his posture upright. Holden, she murmured near his ear. You're here, not there. Look at me. He opened his eyes slowly. Davisha cupped his face with both hands, gently but firmly, grounding him. Follow my breath, she said. In and out. He obeyed. She kept her hands on his face, her thumbs brushing the tension from his jaw, her gaze steady, unwavering. He anchored himself in her rhythm, her warmth, her strength. You don't carry this alone anymore, she whispered. You hear me? You're not fighting ghosts. You're fighting for us. Holden swallowed hard, the panic slowly retreating. Davisha, he whispered, his voice raw. I don't know what I'd be without you. She didn't flinch. You'd still be strong, she said, but I'm here to make you stronger. He let out a shaky breath and leaned into her touch. Stay with me, he murmured. She rested her forehead gently against his. I'm right here, she whispered, and I'm not moving. He exhaled deeply, grounded, calmer, held. And for the first time in years, Holden Crestwell's panic didn't swallow him. Davisha did what no operative training ever could. She brought him back. In Washington, D.C., Senator Hale stood in his private conference suite, meeting with 3 elite operatives, not syndicate thugs, but the kind of men trained in quiet eliminations. The senator scanned the room with cool detachment. You're here because Crestwell is becoming a liability, Hale said. I'm sure you've heard he's resurfaced. One operative stepped forward. We located his trail in Wyoming. He's with a woman. Hale's jaw flexed. Yes, his wife. Davisha Ray Crestwell. He tapped the table, bringing up a blurred surveillance still of Davisha. She's a complication, he said. And a pressure point. Another operative asked, What's our directive? Hale folded his hands behind his back. Bring me Crestwell alive. He paused. A deadly pause. As for the girl, remove her. The room stiffened. Understood, the lead operative said. If Crestwell resists, Hale added, remind him what happens to people who expose secrets meant to stay buried. He poured himself a drink as the operatives prepared to leave. One more thing, Hale said calmly. He opened a classified vault tonight. The operatives looked at each other. That means, Hale continued, he's desperate, cornered, dangerous. He smiled coldly. Exactly the kind of man I prefer to hunt. The gala shimmered like a world entirely separate from danger. A luxury Denver hotel turned political playground. Gold lighting, crystal glasses, soft, orchestral music. Power disguised as elegance. Holden adjusted his suit jacket, borrowed, slightly loose but formal enough to blend in. Davisha stood beside him, stunning in a black evening dress Toller managed to secure last minute. She held a small silver clutch containing a disguised data drive. You ready? Holden whispered. She took a steadying breath. As ready as anyone sneaking into a political gala to expose a dynasty. He gave a small smile. Stay close. They walked through the lobby's rotating doors, entering a world where senators, CEOs, donors, and high-ranking contractors mingled freely. If only they knew the files Davisha carried could topple every wall around them. Holden pointed discreetly. The server room is 2 floors down. Keycards only. Davisha nodded. Toller's diversion is still on schedule? Holden glanced at his burner phone. He should activate it any. The fire alarm blared suddenly. Guests startled. Staff murmured. Security rushed toward emergency panels. Holden smirked. Now, they slipped into a restricted hallway, while chaos swirled behind them. Davisha quickened her steps. How much time do we have? 5 minutes before they realize it's false, Holden said. 3 minutes before backup generators re-engage the locks. And how long to plant the evidence? 30 seconds if I'm fast, Holden replied. She exhaled. You're fast. They reached the server door. Holden bent down, retrieving a small lock override tool hidden in his shoe heel, a relic from his operative days. Davisha arched an eyebrow. You really were trained for everything, weren't you? Holden didn't look up. Not everything. Just the things that made me dangerous. The lock clicked open. Davisha slipped inside first. Rows of humming machines filled the narrow space, their blinking lights reflecting her determination. Holden plugged in the disguised USB. Uploading, he whispered. Come on, come on. Davisha watched the door, heart pounding. At last, the laptop flashed. Transfer complete. Initiating automated distribution it's in, Holden said. Every news outlet, every watchdog group, every oversight committee, they'll all get a piece. Davisha smiled, a fierce, proud expression. But then, footsteps thundered down the hallway. Holden yanked the USB and grabbed her hand. We're done, he whispered. Now we get out. The server room door burst open just as Holden pulled Davisha behind a rolling storage rack. Search every room, a guard shouted. Davisha held her breath. Holden placed a protective hand over hers. The guards split up. Holden leaned to her ear. On my count, we move. She nodded. 1, 2. A guard approached the server door. Holden whispered. 3. They bolted. They sprinted down a polished corridor, rounds of startled gasps echoing from gala guests who hadn't yet been evacuated. The contrast between shimmering chandeliers and raw danger made the chase dizzying. Security on the north wing. Someone yelled behind them. Davisha grabbed Holden's arm. Elevator? No. Too slow, Holden said. Stairs. They ran toward the emergency stairwell, pushing through the door as guards shouted after them. Holden guided her downward quickly but carefully. Don't stop, he said breathlessly. They'll try to cut us off. Davisha saw 2 guards rushing up toward them from below. Holden, I see them. He pulled her to the next floor, bursting into another hallway lined with hotel rooms. Guests opened their doors in confusion. Holden grabbed Davisha's hand, weaving through clusters of startled people. The guards followed, not close enough to catch them, but close enough to keep the pressure burning. They reached the mezzanine balcony overlooking the grand lobby, marble floors, massive staircase, glittering lights. Davisha gasped. Holden, we can't jump this. No, he said, scanning quickly. But we can improvise. He spotted a decorative rigging line for a massive chandelier drape. Davisha understood instantly. Holden, you can't be serious. He grabbed the rope, tested the tension, then held out his hand. Trust me. She took it. Together, they swung over the balcony, gliding downward, hearts thundering, landing hard on the lobby's carpet. Guests screamed. Security scattered. Run! Holden shouted, tugging Davisha toward the revolving doors. The guards hit the lobby seconds later, but the couple was already sprinting across the sidewalk toward a side alley where Toller waited in a stolen delivery van. Get in! Toller yelled. They dove inside, slamming the doors shut as Toller sped away, merging into Denver traffic. Davisha leaned against Holden, breath ragged, adrenaline still surging. Holden cupped her cheek gently. You okay? She nodded slowly. Only because you were beside me. Holden pulled her into a tight embrace, exhaling into her hair. We're not safe yet, he whispered. But we exposed enough to make them desperate. Davisha tightened her hold on him. Good, she said fiercely. Let them know we're not afraid. Holden touched his forehead to hers. This time, he murmured, we fight on our terms. Holden hadn't slept. His body was bruised from the chase at the gala, and his ribs still felt tight where Davisha had steadied him, but his mind stayed sharp. Before dawn, he sat at the small wooden table in their safe cabin outside Riverton, the glow from his laptop casting a pale ring of light around him. Davisha walked in quietly, wrapped in his flannel shirt, still warm from the night before. Her voice was soft, but worried. "Holden, you're shaking." He didn't deny it. His hands trembled subtly, not from fear, but from the weight of what he was about to do. "They've used the shadows long enough," he said. "Today the world finally sees what they are." She came closer, resting her hand over his. He exhaled, grounding himself in her calm presence. "Are you sure this is the move?" she asked gently. He looked at her, and she was the anchor he had never deserved, but somehow found. "If I disappear," he whispered, "their crimes disappear with me. This ends today." She nodded, moving behind him and resting her chin lightly on his shoulder. "Then I'm right here. Whatever storm comes from this, we face it as one." Holden clicked the final upload, and the world ignited. Within minutes, 3 national networks picked up the leaked files: illegal intelligence operations, bribed contractors, forged documents, private paramilitary activity tied directly to the dynasty. Comment sections exploded. News anchors panicked. Government officials denied everything. But the truth had already spread. Holden stepped back from the table, chest rising and falling with the release of something heavy. Davisha wrapped her arms around him from behind. He held her hands, his voice low. "Once this goes public, they won't stop anymore. They'll come harder." Davisha turned him gently to face her. "Yes," she said, "but now the world is watching. You're not alone in the dark anymore." His jaw flexed, not with fear, but with the quiet acceptance of a man who just set fire to an empire. They stayed close, forehead to forehead, breathing the same air, the morning sun creeping in like a reluctant witness. Then a notification flashed on his laptop. A name neither of them expected. The whisper, online. Davisha's heartbeat quickened. "Holden." "Who is that?" He swallowed. "A ghost." He closed the laptop slowly. "A man even the dynasty fears. They only send him when they want something done quietly. Permanently." Davisha stepped back, her expression tightening with worry. "And now he's awake because of you?" Holden nodded once. "No. Because of us." The air in the cabin felt colder, not from weather but from destiny tightening around them. They didn't hear him at first. No footsteps, no engine, just a shift in the stillness, like the world paused for a breath. Holden stiffened, his instincts firing before his brain finished forming a thought. "Davisha," he murmured, "step behind me." She obeyed, but her eyes stayed locked on the front door. A slender shadow slid across the porch. 3 knocks, soft, deliberate, like someone confident enough not to break the door, because he knew he didn't need to. Holden's voice dropped to a low warning. "Don't move." The door creaked open on its own, the latch undone. A man stood there, dressed in black, not bulky or threatening by size but by stillness, a calmness that felt unnatural. "Holden Crestwell," he said in a voice barely above a whisper, the kind that made the nickname make sense. Davisha felt a shiver run through her. Something about the man felt wrong, too quiet, too controlled, like emotion had been carved out of him long ago. Holden stepped forward protectively. "I know why you're here." The whisper tilted his head slightly. "The dynasty requests your presence." "Alive." His eyes then drifted to Davisha, not with interest, but with cold calculation. She was not part of the agreement. Holden moved in front of her fully. "She's my wife." The whisper blinked once. A weakness. Davisha felt Holden tense, not at the insult, but at the threat. "You touch her," Holden said quietly, "and you'll need more than whispers to save yourself." For the first time, the whisper smiled, a thin, haunting slip of expression. "You think I came here to harm her?" He leaned slightly forward. "No, I came because harming you would harm her more." Before Holden could react, the cabin window exploded. A warning shot. Davisha screamed, dropping to the floor as Holden shielded her with his body. The whisper stepped back into the light. "This is the beginning, Mr. Crestwell, not the end." He vanished into the trees, leaving nothing but a chilling unsettledness behind. Holden held Davisha tightly until her shaking slowed. She swallowed hard. That man wants you dead." Holden gently brushed her cheek. "No, he wants me gone, and he wants you broken." She looked up at him with fierce determination. "Then he picked the wrong woman." Her strength steadied him in ways he didn't know he needed. Night returned with tension so thick neither could sleep. Holden paced the cabin, checking every lock, reinforcing every window. Davisha watched him, her worry growing with each step he took. "Holden, you're hurting," she whispered. He kept pacing. "I'm fine. You're limping." He froze. He'd hoped she wouldn't notice. She approached him slowly, her touch gentle but firm as she guided him to sit. "Please let me help you," she murmured. Before he could reply, a faint crunch. Outside, a footstep. Holden moved instantly, grabbing Davisha and pulling her to the floor behind the sofa. "Stay down," he breathed. A figure approached the window, shining a flashlight inside. Davisha's heart pounded. Holden rose slowly, ready to strike. The window shattered. A figure lunged inside. Holden fought with a strength driven by pure protectiveness. The intruder swung a metal baton, and Holden took the blow to his shoulder with a grunt. Davisha crawled, searching for anything. A lamp, a tool, something to help. Holden blocked another strike, then shoved the attacker back. But the second man rushed in. 2 against 1. Too fast. Too coordinated. Holden took a hit to the ribs so hard he stumbled, coughing. Davisha cried out, "Holden!" The moment he looked toward her, a knife swiped across his side. His shirt darkened instantly. He staggered. Davisha grabbed a piece of firewood, striking the attacker from behind. He collapsed. Holden used the moment to disarm the second assailant, slamming him against the wall until he went limp. But Holden himself was swaying. He pressed a hand to his side, breath shallow. Davisha rushed to him. "Sit. Please, sit." He collapsed to his knees, leaning into her. Her hands shook as she pressed cloth against the wound. "Stay with me," she whispered frantically. "Holden, look at me." His eyes fluttered. "Davisha, you saved me." She held his face. "You're not allowed to die. Not tonight. Not ever. I'm right here." He forced a weak smile. "I know. That's why I'm still breathing." Holden lay on the couch, pale from blood loss but conscious. Davisha worked quickly. Disinfectant, pressure, stitching materials from the emergency kit. Holden insisted they keep stocked. "Tell me what to do," she whispered. Holden breathed through pain. "You're doing perfect." But the bleeding didn't slow enough, and he was fading again. She could see it in the glaze forming over his eyes. "No," she whispered fiercely. "We're not losing this fight. Not after everything." She grabbed the flashlight and inspected the wound again. The knife had cut deeper than she feared. Holden exhaled shakily. "Davisha, if something happens, nothing is happening." Her voice cut sharp, trembling with devotion. She tore strips from her shirt for extra bandaging, applying firm pressure just as Holden taught her in case of emergencies. He hissed in pain but nodded. "That's it. Keep it tight." She leaned close, her forehead touching his. "Stay with me, please. I need you." His weak hand lifted, brushing her cheek. "You're the only reason I'm still fighting." She steadied his head in her hands. "Good. Then fight harder." With the bleeding controlled, she moved him into a safer corner of the cabin, away from windows, securing the area the way Holden had shown her. Then she grabbed his phone, activating the encrypted emergency beacon Toller once mentioned. Within minutes she received a coded reply, "On the way. Hold position." Davisha returned to Holden's side, stroking his hair as he drifted in and out. She whispered softly, "Breathe with me. In and out. I've got you." Her calm voice kept him present, kept him alive. By morning, Holden could sit up again, though he moved stiffly. Toller arrived, checking the attackers and scanning the area. "You two need to disappear," he warned. "The whisper isn't finished." Holden looked at Davisha, her tired eyes, her steady hands, the courage she'd shown all night. His expression softened with love, then hardened with resolve. "No," Holden said quietly. "This ends with me." Davisha's breath caught. "What does that mean?" Holden stood slowly, wincing but determined. "He won't stop until I'm gone. If I stay beside you, you're a target. If I step into his shadows alone, he focuses on me, and only me." Davisha stepped forward, grabbing his arm. "You're not sacrificing yourself. We're in this together." Holden cupped her face gently, his voice tender and devastating. "You saved my life last night. Now I need to protect yours." Toller watched silently, understanding the sacrifice Holden was preparing. Davisha shook her head, tears rising. "No. Holden, please. Don't walk into that storm alone. You promised we were a team." He rested his forehead against hers. I know, and that's why I have to do this. They want me, not you. If I go to them willingly, they stop hunting us. Her voice cracked. They'll kill you. His thumb brushed her cheek. Then I die buying you freedom, but I won't let them take you because of me. Devisha grabbed his shirt, pulling him into a kiss that was desperate and trembling. A kiss that tasted like goodbye. He kissed her back with everything he had left, holding her face in both hands. When he pulled away, his eyes shined with heartbreak. I love you, he whispered. Enough to face the darkness alone. Devisha's tears finally fell. But Holden turned toward the door. Battered, wounded, determined. He stepped out onto the dirt path. A man walking toward danger. A man choosing her safety over his breath. Devisha collapsed to her knees as he disappeared into the Wyoming horizon. The wind cut across the Wyoming desert like it had been summoned to witness the ending of a war. The abandoned government compound sat miles from any road. Long metal structures, half sunk into the earth, old satellite dishes frozen in place like rusted bones. It was the kind of place America pretended had never existed. Holden brought the truck to a stop behind a collapsed hangar. He didn't speak, not at first. Devisha watched him grip the steering wheel with both hands, knuckles pale, jaw tight, breathing steady but heavy enough to betray everything he tried to hide. This wasn't fear. It was resignation, the type a man feels when he knows he's stepping into the moment his whole life has been running from. Holden, talk to me, she whispered. His voice trembled in a way she had only heard once, the night he thought he'd lose her in the barn ambush. This is where it ends, he said. For them, or for me. Lights flickered in the distance, moving shapes, crossing beams, tactical patterns. Whoever was inside the compound was already preparing for them. Devisha reached across and took his hand, pressing it to her chest. You're not alone. Holden closed his eyes, the strength in his face shifting, softening, as if her touch had reached somewhere deeper than bone. I know, he murmured. That's what scares me. They stepped out of the truck just as a low hum vibrated across the ground. A drone hovered above, sweeping the desert with a red tracking line. They want us to come in, Holden said. No more chasing. This is staged. Then let's walk in, Devisha answered, stepping closer, fearless in a way that shook even him. The doors to the compound slid open with a metallic groan. Inside, shadows moved with purpose. The Whisper's men, waiting, silent, forming a corridor that funneled them deeper. Holden tightened his grip on Devisha's hand. Whatever happened next, they were walking into fate together. The Whisper appeared without sound, stepping from the darkness like he had been carved from it. He was unmasked now, expression blank, eyes colder than Wyoming winter. Crestwell, he said calmly. Step away from the woman. Devisha felt the shift before she understood it. A small nod from the Whisper, a signal, and in one motion 2 operatives grabbed her from behind, pinning her arms before she could react. Holden, she screamed. Holden lunged forward, but the Whisper raised a silenced weapon to her head. Not fired, not graphic, but close enough that Holden froze instantly. Let her go, Holden growled. No, the Whisper replied. She is leverage. You are a problem. Devisha struggled, fury rising in her throat. Holden, don't. Stop talking, the Whisper ordered. She did, but only to steady her breath, refusing to show fear. Holden looked at her, and she saw the truth in his eyes. He wasn't afraid for himself. He was terrified of losing her. Take me, Holden said, voice low, steady, resigned. That's what you want. I'll go. Just release her. Devisha thrashed harder. Holden, no. Surrender, the Whisper said, and she walks away alive. Holden slowly raised his hands. No, Devisha whispered, tears gathering but refusing to fall. Holden, please. He gave her a small smile, gentle, heartbreaking. You were the only part of my life that wasn't built on lies. The operative seized him, forced him to his knees, bound his hands behind his back. The Whisper leaned down, whispering into Holden's ear. You shouldn't have loved her. Devisha cried out, fighting restraints, but Holden shook his head once. I choose you, even now. The Whisper lifted his hand. Bring him inside. Devisha's world shattered. They dragged Holden to a central chamber, old concrete, flickering lights, a steel table bolted to the floor. The Whisper's men forced him to his knees in front of it. Devisha was thrown into the same room moments later, wrists bound but unbroken. She crawled toward Holden, but a guard kicked her back gently but firmly. The Whisper stood between them. Holden Crestwell, he announced flatly. Your testimony threatens a dynasty. Your survival is inconvenient. Your death restores order. Devisha felt her heart detonate inside her chest. "Don't you touch him," she shouted, her voice rattling the chamber walls. The whisper ignored her and lifted the weapon. Holden didn't plead, didn't move, didn't breathe. He simply looked at Devisha. The kind of look a man gives the love of his life in the last seconds he expects to live. Then Devisha moved. It wasn't planned. It wasn't logical. It was love fused with instinct. She threw herself sideways into an old control panel, slamming her shoulder into a loose cable. Sparks flew. The room plunged into darkness as alarms erupted. The whisper fired, but the shot hit the wall behind Holden. Devisha, dazed and shaking from the impact, pushed herself across the floor. "Holden, get up." For the first time in the entire campaign to destroy him, the whisper lost composure. "Find them," he hissed. Holden used the chaos to slam his shoulder into a guard, shattering his balance. Devisha kicked another in the knee, sending him down hard without injuries described. Holden reached her, grabbed her by the waist, and pulled her behind overturned machinery as operatives shouted through the dark. "Devisha," he whispered, breath shaking, "you saved my life." She cupped his face, forehead pressed to his. "I'm not losing you. Not here, not to them. Darkness or not." That moment lit the room. Boots thundered overhead. Voices barked orders. The entire compound shook as a battering ram ripped through the outer doors. Flashlights swept across the darkness. "Federal Task Force, drop your weapons." Toller's voice cut like thunder. The whisper's operatives turned, confused, cornered, thrown into chaos by Devisha's sabotage. Holden pulled Devisha to safety behind a steel beam as the room flooded with tactical teams. The whisper attempted to escape through a side corridor, but Toller stepped into his path, firearm raised. "It's over," Toller said. The whisper lunged, but was immediately subdued by federal agents. Several operatives froze, realizing reinforcements had arrived in overwhelming numbers. Within minutes, the compound was secured. Evidence servers were seized. Command logs were extracted. The dynasty that had hunted Holden for years crumbled under the sheer weight of the exposed truth. Toller hurried toward Holden and Devisha, eyes burning with relief and anger. "You two have a talent for ruining my blood pressure," he muttered. Devisha laughed breathlessly, still shaking. "You took long enough." Toller shook his head. "You're unbelievable. Both of you." Once the immediate threat passed, Holden slumped against the wall. Devisha's breath caught. His shirt was damp with a spreading stain. Not graphic, but clear enough to show he'd been hurt in the chaos. "Holden," she whispered softly, hands trembling as she supported him. "It's shallow." He forced a smile. "Just hurts like hell." Toller knelt beside him. "An ambulance is on the way. Stay awake." Holden's eyes drifted toward Devisha, softening as he cupped her cheek with weak fingers. "You came back for me," he murmured. "I'll always come back for you." Her voice cracked with emotion. "You think love runs from danger?" Holden exhaled a broken laugh, half pain, half wonder. "You were my peace," he whispered, "in a world built on lies." Devisha lowered her forehead to his. Her tears fell onto his cheek, not from fear, from relief, from love strong enough to outlive death's shadow. Holden's breathing steadied as sirens approached. She held him close, refusing to move. Because no matter how many secrets, dynasties, or shadows tried to claim them, love, real love, was the one thing they never saw coming. The hospital room was quiet except for the soft rhythm of machinery and the low whisper of Wyoming wind outside the window. Holden lay propped slightly against the pillows, eyes open but heavy, breath steady yet shallow. He was alive, but survival had left its marks. Devisha sat beside him, fingers laced through his, her thumb brushing the back of his hand. Even awake, he seemed suspended between worlds, part of him here with her, part still standing in that abandoned compound where he had nearly lost everything. His chest rose and fell with careful intention, as though breathing itself required concentration. "You're looking at me like I'm about to drift off," he murmured, voice hoarse but warm. "That's because you almost did," Devisha whispered, leaning closer. "You scared me." Holden turned his head slowly, eyes meeting hers. "I know. I'm sorry." She shook her head. "Don't apologize for surviving." A quiet smile tugged at his lips. "I wasn't surviving. You pulled me back." Devisha blinked away, the emotion swelling in her chest. She had been brave through the fights, the escapes, the near execution. But this man, lying in a hospital bed, recovering from a wound earned while protecting her, was what finally made her exhale tears she had held inside for days. Holden lifted a trembling hand and brushed her cheek. "You're safe," he said softly. "That's all I care about." She leaned into his palm. "We're safe. Both of us." Yet she saw something in his eyes. The quiet shadow left behind after being hunted for years. The exhaustion of a man who had spent too long surviving instead of living. He was alive, but healing would go beyond the body. 2 weeks later, Holden stepped outside the hospital for the first time. The Wyoming sun warmed his face as he and Davisha walked toward the waiting SUV Toller had arranged. But the moment they reached the parking lot, the world reminded him he no longer lived in silence. Cameras clicked. Microphones extended. Reporters rushed forward. "Mr. Crestwell, sir, how does it feel to expose the dynasty's corruption? Did you anticipate becoming a national hero? Is it true the senator has been formally indicted? What role did your wife play in your escape?" Holden stopped, not out of fear but disbelief. For years, he had lived unseen, unknown, buried under false identities and deserts of secrets. Now the country knew his name, his story, his fight. Davisha squeezed his hand. "You don't have to say anything if you're not ready." But he did speak, because the truth demanded it. "I didn't expose a conspiracy to be a hero," he said calmly. "I did it so people in power stopped treating human lives as disposable." The reporters quieted. "And I survived because someone refused to let fear win." His eyes slid to Davisha. Every camera followed. Toller stepped forward, clearing the path. "That's enough for today. Let them breathe." As they climbed into the SUV, Davisha rested her head on Holden's shoulder. "They're calling you a legend now," she whispered. Holden exhaled slowly. "I don't feel like one." "That's what makes you different," she said. "Heroes who never wanted the title are the ones who deserve it." Holden didn't respond, not because he disagreed, but because he was, still learning how to accept a life he never thought he'd have. The ranch felt different when they returned. Not haunted, not dangerous, just quiet. Holden walked through the living room, touching the edges of the furniture he had once, viewed as temporary, a shelter he might leave at any moment if danger returned. But now, every object felt anchored, grounded, safe. Davisha watched him as he paused by the window overlooking the open fields. "What's going through your mind?" she asked softly. He took a slow breath. "I spent years waiting for someone to find me. Now, I wake up waiting for you." Davisha stepped behind him and wrapped her arms around his waist. He placed his hands over hers, pulling her even closer. "You don't have to be strong every minute," she whispered. "Not with me." He turned to face her, pressing his forehead gently to hers. Their signature gesture, the one they always fell into when words weren't enough. "I know," he said, "and that scares me, because I trust you more than I've trusted anyone." Davisha smiled. "Love does that." Holden brushed his fingers along her jaw, slow and reverent. "You saw me when the world only saw the threat I carried. You loved me when I didn't know how to love myself. And you loved me when danger wouldn't let you breathe," she whispered. His voice broke, just slightly. "I'm learning. Because of you." In the world's eyes, he was the man who brought down a dynasty. In hers, he was the man who finally allowed himself to feel. Holden Crestwell, fierce, haunted, brilliant, was soft with only one person. Davisha, his anchor, his peace. Months passed. Grass returned to the fields the dynasty once drove their trucks across. Birds nested along the barn roof again. The fear that once stalked every corner of Holden's life dissolved into something he barely recognized. Normalcy. Davisha brought life into the home in ways Holden didn't realize he needed. Gospel music on Sunday mornings. Fresh flowers on the table, laughter in the kitchen, warmth in all the places his past had left cold. Holden learned how to breathe again. They rebuilt the ranch fence together, their version of therapy. They adopted a horse that wandered onto the land. They cooked dinner side by side, brushing shoulders, stealing quick kisses, letting silence be comfortable rather than tense. One night, as the sun dipped into the Wyoming horizon, Davisha sat on the porch swing with a blanket wrapped around both of them. Holden rested against her shoulder, his body warm against hers, his breathing steady and peaceful. "This doesn't feel real sometimes," she whispered. Holden kissed her temple. "It feels real to me. No more running, no more running, no more dynasty, no more dynasty. And us." Her voice softened. Holden shifted, pulling her into his lap so he could look into her eyes, deeply, quietly, honestly. "Us is the one thing I'll never question," he said. Davisha touched his cheek. "You sure?" Holden nodded, placing his hand gently over her heart. "This is my home now. With you, love after war." Peace after storms. Life after survival. Later that night, as moonlight washed over the Wyoming plains, Holden slipped his hand into Davisha's and whispered, "We fought through shadows, but love brought us back into the light." Davisha smiled, resting her head against his chest. "Real love protects," she whispered. "Real love fights. Family." If this love story moved you, comment below. Real love protects. Real love fights. It helps the channel grow, and it tells YouTube to push your video to more hearts that need this story.